Oh, I did it. Finally, it's been a year and a half. I had a competition this weekend for the first time since early last year before the pandemic. Let's get one thing out of the way, I did terribly in 3x3 and didn't make finals. I guess I'm just an old washed up cuber now. Except recently I've mainly been practicing 3x3 blindfolded, and that's where we get to the thing that I did. Here's a little preview. I got a really good blindfolded time, which was even better considering the state I was in during that solve. And I'll talk more about the solve later, but first I want to explain what was going on in this competition. If you look at a competition schedule, that doesn't actually tell you when the competition begins. It really begins the night before the competition when you can't sleep. I was really nervous for the competition, and my sleep schedule is not ready for me to wake up that early, so I ended up only getting about 2 good hours of sleep. So yeah, the competition was ruined for me before I even got there. Then in 3x3, I get a mid-9 average to begin with, which was actually not bad considering I got 2 11s. And for one of these 11s, I really messed up, and if I didn't, I might have gotten a pretty good average, but overall, I don't really even care because I wasn't practicing 3x3 one bit for this competition. Next were events that I don't do and lunch, so I went to my car and I took a nap for 30 minutes, which makes my total night's sleep now 2 hours and 30 minutes. Oh geez, there's still the rest of the competition to go. Next up was 4x4. I didn't really practice this either, but I did surprisingly well and got my best average in competition, and I got a 29-second solve, which I actually thought was my first sub 30 in competition, but turns out it wasn't, and I had a better one before this. But I guess sometimes ignorance is bliss because I got to relive that experience again. I think this is PR.
Is it?
I think so. Tristan, I got a sub 30 after you told me good luck.
I'm so proud of you.
It actually works.
I'm so proud of you.
And who knows, maybe one day I'll get my first official sub 30 4x4 solve for the 3rd time. Overall, these solves were just very lucky with not very many parodies, and that's actually part of why I don't like 4x4, because even though I have been better than this in competition before, just getting fewer parodies actually leads to better averages, and it's so luck-based. Next up, there was 3x3 round 2, and I don't even want to talk about this. This average just felt so bad. I wasn't focused at all, and I had a counting 9, 10, and 10, and somehow this ended up being a sub 10 average. I thought it was going to be like mid 10, you know? This is kind of what just happens. Once you are sub 10, it's hard to get an average above 10 anymore. Like, it didn't look like it was going to be sub 10, but it still was. You know, what gives, math? Anyway, 3x3 was done. I wasn't even close to making finals, so let's just move on to something that actually matters. Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Next was 5x5. So I had already spent half of my day at the competition on 2.5 hours of sleep, and I hadn't even done a single solve of something I cared about yet. So the pressure was on. Okay, I was so nervous that I forgot to start the camera before saying ready, but then I already saw the cube, so I thought, I gotta pick up the cube now, so my first solve wasn't recorded. At least not by me. This was Max Shaw's stream, so thank you for streaming all the competitions you go to, because I often find some good footage of me here. Okay, you guys can't see anything. The result I got for my first solve was 1 minute, and it felt like a 58 when I finished, which meant that I was spending 2 extra seconds being nervous. And that's really not good because I wanted a sub 1 average, and it looks like this is going to be the difference between sub 1 and not sub 1. Then I started my next solve and I remembered something. Recently, practicing at home, I had actually started averaging slightly over a minute, and it was really annoying because I was averaging like 58 and I had no clue what changed. But then a few days right before the competition, I started averaging 57 again, and what made that difference was actually just remembering to think about the color order of the centers during cross edges. So on 5x5, I use the Yao method, and when you make the cross edges, you have to get them in the right order on the side, and sometimes I take time to look at where a piece should go, which impedes my look ahead, and sometimes I forget that you're not supposed to do that. And before this next solve, I really reminded myself to think hard about that during cross edges, and I ended up getting a really good time. This solve ended up being 52 seconds. I don't get times like this very often, and getting it in competition while I was super nervous was definitely a huge confidence booster. The rest of the average had its ups and downs, but I ended up with a 57.42 average, which destroys my old average of 1 minute. You can see, after getting this, I was so happy and also so relieved just because I had no clue how I would perform in a competition after a year and a half off, but this definitely proved to myself that I could still perform in an event I cared about. Feels good. I can now say 5x5 is one of my main events again. And this average now puts me at number 105 in the world. First of all, this was great, but this was not even the highlight of the competition, so that's how well this competition went for me. And second, that's what I got, second place. Okay, in case you guys don't know, Maddie doesn't usually show up to our competitions, so I basically got first. No, but he is amazing at 3x3, and in case you don't know what I mean by that, world class. Before competing in 5x5, Maddie actually came up to me and asked me what I average in 5x5, and I said about 57 seconds, and he said, "Oh, you might beat me then." I thought to myself, probably not, but that would be cool. And then he gets a 51 and wins the competition. Like, are you serious? That's not even close. I've never gotten any average like that ever. Maddie, you absolute liar. Nah, I'm just kidding. Maddie, you're great. Remember me when you get that world record average. 3x3 blindfolded right after square one. You know, thank God there was square one in the schedule right there because that gave me just enough time to practice blindfolded before going in to compete. For these blindfolded solves, I was more nervous than for anything I've done before. And I've talked about this before. I practiced and learned a new method starting in the beginning of the pandemic, not knowing competitions were not coming back for a while. And I was on 2.5 hours of sleep, already having done a bunch of solves. And on top of all that, the format for 3x3 blindfolded is you get 3 solves. I waited a year and a half to get 3 solves. No wonder so many good blinders just quit cubing. Like, I feel it now. This is a really unforgiving event. Why did I even make this my main event? I didn't really think it through. So on the first solve, I actually did really well, except for one thing. Just one thing ruined this entire solve. So a quick recap on how blindfolded memorization works. I have a letter for each side of each piece on the cube, and I use those to create words, and I memorize those words, and that's how you memorize the cube. Now, what I had to memorize for a particular part of this solve was CO. And for CO, I use Coke, like Coca-Cola, not like the other kind of Coke. For CO, I used to picture coal, but then I switched it to Coke because it worked better, and in that moment, I forgot that it was Coke. I thought for a few seconds and I could not remember what CO was supposed to be. So I did the smart thing and I just used coal because I still remember that I can use that. But then when we get around to execution, I learned that there was a reason I switched off of coal. I forgot the memorization right at that point because coal is not very memorable. No wonder I switched it to something else. So I paused when trying to memorize it, and then I paused because I forgot what I memorized later on. So it ended up being not a good solve by my standards, and it was really just because of one thing, and that made me extra nervous. Although there was also something else that made me less nervous, and this is actually huge. I'm going to show you exactly what made me less nervous. So this is my blindfold, and this right here that you saw me wearing, these block out noise, and they are just earmuffs. So I could barely hear anything, especially because during blindfolded events in a competition, they tell everyone to be quiet. So if you're having a conversation near me, I can still kind of hear you, but this blocked out just any ambient noise, and the sound of people turning next to me, those make me really nervous as well. I was looking down at the cube, and I made sure that these would cover the top half of my eyes. I couldn't see anyone in the competition when I did this, and that actually helped with my nerves so much. And that was exactly how I composed myself for the next solve. It's beautiful. Oh man, I felt such a rush and so relieved, but I couldn't make a big reaction out of it because you're supposed to be quiet, and that's why all you get is the fist bump. But from everything that I said about earlier in the competition and before the competition, and also what happened in the solve right before this, and the entire year and a half that I didn't get to compete, I think this really paints a picture as to why this meant so much to me. When I looked down and saw the 25 seconds, at that moment, the competition was over for me. I still had one more solve that I focused in and tried to do well on, but the scramble was so bad and I forgot the memorization at some points, so it's fine, I got a DNF. Looks like my average is still gonna have to be 2 minutes for now. But my 25.36 second single solve puts me at number 105 in the world, which ties for 5x5, and so I guess these are kind of like both my main events equally good now, except for fewest moves, where it says I'm really good, but I also got lucky and now I'm retired forever. Wow. It's finally over. I actually won. Am I allowed to go up there? I don't think so. They can trust my judgment. Good? Well, if it isn't Brian's son. He'll find a way to upload a video before his next solve. Here we have Max Shaw in his natural habitat. Every competition ever. Give me my podiums back. Yeah, he has a 4, if he counts the 4. I don't know how good the average would be. Might actually be world record, no? Not sure. Oh! Hey, that might be.
It's not world record. I can calculate.
Oh, well, sorry. Wait, it's 492 and 2 low 6s, right? So it's like a 6.0 and a 6.1. 568. 568. Close to that? That's amazing. Good job, Maddie. Yo, Maddie, congrats.
Sure, bro.
I should probably sanitize my hands. I still had to drive home and then drive back the next day because, oh, did I mention this was a 2-day competition, except they were 2 different competitions, so not really. The competition had 100 competitors, but it was just 50 on Saturday and 50 on Sunday. Now, the reason I competed on Saturday was because me and my friend Kevin Matthews were both very good at Blindfolded. We wanted to split the podium and not have the pressure of racing each other, so we just picked different days, and he wanted Sunday. So after I picked Saturday, I found out I'm in the same competition as Maddie, Max Shaw, who steals all my podiums, and Brendan, who I didn't know before the competition, but turns out was also really good at Blindfolded, and that put me just on the harder day for every single event. But with that being said, I'm still happy I competed on Saturday because the 3x3 Blindfolded second scramble was great. Here's the scramble for the second solve, and for Blindfolded, I used the Diane Tanyan version 1. I started by memorizing the corner pieces, and I used UFL as the buffer. Sorry if you use UFR like most people who use 3-style, but I mirrored everything. This is red of red, white, green, so that went here, which is the letter M for me, and then this goes here, which is V. This goes to the buffer again, so I started a new cycle. And for MV, I have an image for every letter pair, and for me, this one is Maverick or Logan Paul's bird. Don't worry, Logan Paul's nowhere in my memorization, he just had a very memorable bird. When I start a new cycle, I usually go here, but then I noticed it was solved, so then I usually go here or here, and this time I don't know why I just chose this. This is the letter G, and then that goes to here, which is S. GS is grass. Then this goes back to G, and that solves this piece, so then I start a new cycle, and this is the letter B. GB is globe, and then this is O, and then N for onyx, and that is it for corner memorization. Next, I went to edges, and I start with the UF buffer, so this white-blue goes here, which is the letter A, and this goes to here, which is G. And instead of using letter pair images, I just say out what I get, but I have pre-planned words. So for AG, I say ARG. So this is where I use audio memorization, and you can actually see the part in the solve where I change from visual to audio memo, and it actually goes much faster. So if you're doing blindfolded and you don't use audio memo yet, I highly recommend changing. Then this goes to here, which is M and V, so that's move, and then U, E, which is yeet, because I don't use U as the first letter, I would just change it into a Y. Then this goes here, which is J and S, so Jess. And then this actually is the buffer, so I'm done except for 2 flipped edges. Then I solve edges next because audio memorization doesn't last as long in memory, and I actually went for the 2 edges first because just seeing the pieces lasts even less time. So I did this algorithm to solve the 2 back edges as a flip. Then I go into the regular edge execution using 3 style, which solves 2 pieces at once. First is a G, and I'm not going to explain this too much because either you know it or you don't, but they're all intuitive and it's going to be fast. So then this is MV, so move the buffer to M, interchange and undo, and then UE, set up like this into a 4 mover, and then undo, and then JS. So put the buffer here, and then it's this commutator. All right, then I had corners. So this is MV. I do a 3 move setup like this to put them here, do the commutator, and then undo the setup. Then is GS, very easy. Insert here, D, and then take it out and undo. Then GB, also a pure commutator. And then ON, to be honest, I don't even know the logic for this one, I just memorized it as an algorithm. Overall, there were 8 letter pairs and 2 flipped edges, which are also solved in 1 algorithm for a total of 9 algorithms. I think around 10 to 11 algorithms is the average, so 9 is quite lucky. And another way that I got lucky is you can see after I pick up the cube, it randomly just showed up with white top and green front, which is the orientation that I already use. That saved about another second. I did waste 1 second moving my blindfold down because I don't know how to nod don, and I wasn't about to learn it right before the competition. But mark my words, I will learn to nod don by next time. After competing on Sunday, some friends and I went to a restaurant, and as we were about to leave, one of the waitresses recognized me and had, let's say, a very unique reaction. And that was fun because that was actually only the second time I've ever been recognized in public. Like, obviously I go to competitions and people recognize me, but just out and about, that was only the second person. So shout outs to Mia for making it an extra interesting day. And that is it for this video. I am absolutely exhausted. I'm gonna go rest. See you guys next time.
And in first place, as a winner of BC Cubing Cup FA 2021, we have Maddie Nava with a result of 5.68 seconds. Wow!
2021 competition B. Today, Samir Agrawal with 6.81. Matt, congratulations.
And in first place, we have Hjortland with a result of 25.36 seconds. What do you call a territorial dispute with cows that don't have legs?
What?
Ground beef.